amigos, ¿qué tal? Stuart here from Spain Speaks with another podcast this week, number 24?
24, yep.
24, John. So we're getting them down. We're getting them down. 24 podcasts in, and a few things to talk about today. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, tired. A long week with the fiestas and parties and everything else. I had my Littering's birthday party day before yesterday, so with organising that, doing it, kids running all over the house and everything, it's been a long week. I'm looking forward to a nice 950 kilometre round trip drive tomorrow.
Oh, you're off again to,
off to La Manga.
Okay.
Yeah, but this time going there and coming back in the same day, it's going to be a bit of a killer.
Yeah, but the weather's turned, so traffic shouldn't be a problem, I suppose.
Yeah, we're not going to leave until I think it's about 5 o'clock in the morning on Saturday morning.
5 in the morning.
Yeah, because we've got to be there by sort of 10:30. So we're leaving at 5 o'clock in the morning Saturday morning. Plus, I've got to go and pick the lads up in Madrid. We've got 2 games of T20, so that'll take about 6 hours to get through the 2 games, and then we leave maybe about 6 o'clock in the evening. Back on Saturday night. There won't be any traffic on Saturday night, that's for sure.
Now, you mentioned it there briefly, but we celebrated our town fair, town parties, whatever you want to call it, the local fiestas. And you made a comment about the teenage element, John.
Yeah, it's something
or the young teenage element.
Yeah, it's something that's suddenly hit me this year. My oldest daughter's 12's turning 13 at the end. In July. Yep. And of course, it's that time now. She's just gone to high school. She's got lots of new friends.
So she's coming into that age.
Yeah, she's got her friends that are in other high schools and stuff now, but she doesn't see so much. So the ideal place for them to meet is at the fiestas. Yep. But they don't want to be with their parents. Obviously, they want to go out on their own. So it's that time now where, do you let them go on their own? How do you control it? But what time do you let them go out to, etc., etc.? So,
but I think we touched on this last week, and you had the idea to let her go with her friends without you guys there. And how did it go? Well,
it progressed a little bit more than I was expecting.
Really?
So yeah, so the first idea that we had worked perfectly. We let them go on their own. She walked with her friends to the fiestas.
From your place?
From my place, yep. So it's about 15-20 minute walk, slow walk. She met her friends. She sent us a message when she had met with her friends. So we knew exactly what was going on. And it was in the early evening.
Did you have a GPS tracking enabled? No,
I'm not that much of a control freak. But you've got to have some sort of control over what she's doing and stuff. You want to give them freedom, but you need to know where they are. So we gave her specific instructions that, meet your friends, go to the fiestas. You've got a couple of hours on your own at the fiestas. But at 9 o'clock, we're going to be there, and you have to meet us in a specific point at 9 o'clock. And from there, we see what happens. So she met us at 9 o'clock. Everything perfect, no problem at all. We had dinner together, so her friends were there as well. We had the rolls and the typical fiesta food. Yep. And then we let them go off for another hour on their own until 10:30. And then they had to come back and they had to stay with us for the rest of the night. So, they're still only 12, 13 years old. I'm not going to let them be out later than that on their own.
Good.
So that worked out fine. But then what I wasn't expecting was this to be a continuous thing over the 5 days of the fiestas.
Oh, so it happened every day.
She wanted to go every day, which was fine. I was actually quite keen on her to meet up with her friends, because she doesn't get the opportunity to see some of her friends very often, especially with all the schoolwork. So I was actually quite keen on her to do it, because I wanted to keep in contact with her best friends and everything. But then she stayed over her friend's house 2 nights in a row. So then we sort of shared the responsibility between families. So her friend's mum took them and picked them up the following 2 nights and things. So yeah, we shared it. It worked out well, but certainly different compared to some of the other teenagers I saw. That's for sure.
And that's been a topic on the local Facebook page. You tell me that a lot of people were surprised at the age that children are getting into drinking. And this is a topic that I'll bring up. Now, if you've lived in Spain or you're living in Spain currently, you would have noticed that teenagers like to get together in the street.
Yep.
They like to drink alcohol.
Yep.
And they normally leave the bottles and the waste lying around.
Yep, that's the adults as well.
Well, that's everybody, yep. And this is a phenomenon which is called botellón, which translates into English as big bottle.
Big bottle, yeah. It's basically they just all meet together
Doesn't really
in
make
a park
any sense,
or
no.
somewhere, and they just take their own drinks and cups
That's right.
and mixers and everything, and just sit there drinking.
That's right. And the excuse for this was that you know, clubs are expensive, bars are expensive. A lot of people don't have a lot of money. You can buy alcohol in supermarkets or other shops very, very cheap compared to bars and restaurants.
Exactly. Yep.
So, for example, you can get a bottle of whiskey, a bottle of rum, a bottle of vodka, a bottle of gin for about €6 if you go to a discount supermarket.
Yep.
A litre of beer is going to cost you about €1.20 on special.
Yep.
And if you get a home brand beer, probably even under €1.
Yeah, some of them are really cheap.
That's right. And there's even places now where they'll sell you a bottle of alcohol, 2 litres of Coca-Cola, plastic cups and ice for a special price.
Yeah, especially for botellón. Yeah,
exactly. It's like it's deliberately for that market.
Yeah.
And I won't mention what type of shops these are, but they're in all of the Spanish cities nowadays, right? So you can get alcohol really, really cheap. Now, there is a law. There was a law brought in I think it was 2004 or maybe even 2005, which was called the anti-botellón law.
Yeah.
So theoretically, it's illegal for people to come together in the street and drink alcohol.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop anybody from doing it.
No.
And then apparently, I've been speaking to a couple of civil guard. Apparently, when the towns have their local fair or fiestas, botellón is legal.
They turn a blind eye to it. Yeah.
But they turn a blind eye. Okay. So you see it all over the place.
Yeah.
So people start drinking before they get to the fairground. Let's say people are drinking at the fairground.
Yeah.
Teenagers are sitting around all over the place with bottles of beer.
Yeah.
Even though there is alcohol being served there, obviously because they're not 18, they can't buy alcohol in the actual places that are selling alcohol, but they bring their own.
Yep.
And the police are very, what's the word? Very passive.
Lenient. So I mean, but they've been lenient in the fiestas. The police have been very lenient in many different ways, I think, this year. And it's not the police as such. I think it's the council guiding them to what they should and shouldn't be doing.
Because they are municipal police and they are told what to do.
Yeah.
All right.
So I mean, it's to do with the parking, the botellones, there's a lot of things. They just basically let people do things that normally wouldn't be allowed at all, and they let them get away with it because of the fiestas.
Well, and also because there's elections in a
probably
week's time.
Another thing. Yeah.
Don't want to be too critical of that, but I presume that's one of the reasons.
Yep.
I think there was a law this year. Well, I don't know whether it was a law, but they brought in a rule where the music had to be a certain level between 6 and 8 or something. It wasn't allowed to be too loud like other years.
Actually, I don't think they started the music on the actual. I mean, just to give everyone an idea of what the fiestas are like. You have the fairground rides right at the top of the recinto ferial, so the fair area.
I'll put some pictures into the video so you can have a look. Yeah.
So you've got all the fairground rides at the top. A few places where you can get some food at the top as well, but it's mainly fairground rides and stands. Lot of music, very loud, big speakers going on all the time.
Really loud.
And lots of whistling and
noises,
sirens and things as well, not just music. And then the next level down, you go down some stairs down to the main sort of like fair area.
It's on 2 levels.
It's on 2 levels. And the bottom area is a lot bigger, a lot wider, and they've got a section which is a big strip of food outlets. So they've got pizzas.
Basically, it's a car park which is turned into...
No, that's not a car park. No, the first bit's where the actual people are, so it's a walkway.
But it's all
flat.
It's all bitumen. It's not grass or
no, it's all concrete, asphalt and that. But the first part is where it's like a walkway between the concert area, which is the actual auditorium, and the car park. and it's very wide, and it's got a few food outlets. And then you go through some gates, and you go into what is the area where they celebrate the concerts and things, where they have the market on Sundays, etc., etc. And that's where they've got the marquees, and the marquees is where they have the political parties and sports groups and associations.
So we'll put that into a context. So associations, political associations, sporting clubs, probably even the Madrid Cricket Club could have something there.
We could have if we were based in
That's
Rivas,
right. So you go to the council, you say that you want to put one of these things up. You sell food and
drinks, food, the bocatas, the rolls and things.
And you get volunteers to work there, and the profits go to the club, obviously, right? I don't know whether you have to pay the council. You probably have to pay some type of rent
to the council,
That's right. So you get all of these things. Now in Rivas is quite political. So you get a lot of the political parties there.
All of them, I think, pretty much.
Well, well, all of the main ones.
Yeah.
So you get the Popular Party, the Partido Popular. You got the Socialist Party there. You've got Podemos. You've got Izquierda Unida, which is like the United Left, let's say, and then a lot of other groups and associations. Like there's a group there for the Sahari Association as well. There's an Andalusia club.
You've also got the sports clubs.
There's baseball clubs.
Basketball,
American football was there. Football, futsal, whatever they call it. And that's where
Scouts as well.
There was a Scouts there this year, and that's where where the adults congregate. Let's say.
Well, if I'd say families, there's a family.
Family.
So I mean, you got most of the families go there to have something to eat,
but the teenagers are off.
But the teenagers go off.
Yeah.
So it's mainly it's like what we did. We met there. We had dinner together with the whole family, and there were like 5 families. There, and then the teenagers from the 5 families went off to the Fairground rides again, which are like 100 meters away, and then they said, okay, at this time you've got to come back here, and they've got to come back to the food area to meet you and sort of check in, if you like. So it's what most people tend to do.
That's right. Now we'll go back to the botellón. Now the botellón is it. I mean, everybody seems to do it. When I first came to Spain, people used to meet in parks, because in Madrid everybody lives in flats, and they used to call up their friends and say, "We'll meet you in the park downstairs. Get a couple of liters of beer, packet of chips, packet of crisps, some Kikos. Kikos are
the corn, inflated
corn, fried corn." And we'll meet you in the park. Okay, great. So they go down to the park, and somebody rolls a joint, and somebody else has a liter of beer, and you just drink from the bottle.
Bongos and a tambourine, and a guitar.
That's the more elaborated botellón. Somebody brings down a guitar, and they're all sitting there, and this can go on all night.
Oh yeah, all night.
Right.
Yeah.
And but when they finish. Now, I don't know whether this is just me, but very few people seem to want to put their rubbish in the bins.
Now, I mean, I think before...
You think it was different before?
Well, I can't remember ever seeing people leave rubbish sort of 15, 20 years ago when they did that in the parks in Rivas.
I don't know.
I can't remember ever seeing like loads of rubbish all over the floor. It all seems to have happened over the last sort of 10, 12 years. Yeah. And they just don't pick up anything. They just leave everything in the street. So
we went up there on Tuesday night, and there were a couple of young boys, probably 15, 16, I'd say. And they had the typical thing. They had the plastic bag. They had their beer inside that. They have another drink here, which is called calimocho, which is quite popular, which is Coca-Cola and red wine.
Really cheap red wine, normally.
Yeah, normally it's kind of like ones, a Tetra Brick. I don't know how people drink it, but it's popular, right? Because it's cheap.
Yeah.
So they had a couple of litres of beer, the local beer. They had a carton of this red wine, 2-litre bottle of Coke. And I said to my girlfriend on the way up, I said, I guarantee on the way back, they won't put that rubbish in the bin.
Yeah.
On the way back, what was sitting there? Not the kids had taken off.
Yeah.
But the rubbish was ping in the middle of the
But then you've got rubbish bins. You've got the big skip bins.
There was a rubbish bin
right nearby, within
5 meters away.
Yeah, there's probably a rubbish bin. There's rubbish bins everywhere, all along the parks. And even if they're full, you've got the big containers. The actual skip type bins, which in Spain, for those that aren't actually living in Spain, we have like skips type bins, the really big ones with the big lids, which is what people put their rubbish in.
They're just the general rubbish collection.
General rubbish collection. Well, you can put your stuff in there
easily. And they've even got recycling bins, so
yeah.
you could put your plastic bottles in one,
the glass bottles
you could put your glass in the other. So there's no dramas when it comes to that.
Exactly.
But people, for some reason, now I don't want to be too critical, because when you're critical of Spain, people jump on you like you fly on the proverbial. But I can't understand how difficult it is to do. It's like it's a symbol.
Yeah.
You know, it's become part of the process that this is the botellón, this is what we do, and fuck you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a statement of
it's a statement.
Rebellion.
Exactly.
I don't understand it at all. And the thing is that these people live here. I mean, in 5-10 years' time, these kids are going to have kids of their own, or thinking of kids of their own. They're going to be complaining about this thing. Like,
or not,
or doing it with the kids there.
I don't know.
But yeah, it's something I think in other parts of Spain, I've not noticed this issue as much. But in Rivas, I've really noticed the problem. Or in Madrid in general, I've noticed the problem a lot. And people just don't seem to care about littering. They just throw the rubbish. Oh, someone will pick it up. You're going along in the car and people throwing packets of cigarettes and things out the window and things. It's like, why? I mean, surely it's just as easy just to leave it in the car, and when you park, you take it out and put it in a bin. And I just don't. It's something I've never understood. I hate littering. It really annoys me.
But the cigarette butt out of the car window. I mean that's been going on, ever since people have been driving and smoking. Oh, packets you're talking about? No, the whole packet.
The whole packet. Empty packets and boom, throw it out the window.
Okay.
Plastic. They open a new cigarette packet and they throw the plastic out the window. That's a typical thing. It's just.
Well, the highways are littered with rubbish that people throw out on the way. I mean, there's cans of Coke, soft drink cans, food packets, cigarette packets, as you say, cigarette butts, obviously. So obviously, rubbish is something that you throw in the street, expecting someone else.
To me, a cigarette butt is just as bad as anything else. If you smoke, you've just got to be sensible and you've got to be mindful of what you're doing. Okay, you're smoking, but it doesn't mean you have to throw the rubbish on the floor. No, you put the cigarette out and you put it in the bin. If you're going along in a car, especially in summer in Spain, and you throw your cigarette butt out the window, there's so many fires that have actually happened because of it.
Well, that actually happened. If you go from Madrid to Rivas, which is 17 kilometers, in the middle of the highway, they have like an area which is like dried grass, and there's a couple of plants growing, a few weeds. There was a fire recently in that central area.
That's happened a few times.
The highway was cut while they were trying to put this fire out because somebody threw a cigarette out the window.
Yeah.
So, 6 million.
It's dangerous. In Spain, it's really dangerous. It's so hot here in the summer.
Dry,
It's hot, dry, and you've got to be careful, and people just don't seem to think. And it's not just cigarette butts. You throw a glass bottle out the window as well. I mean, that can cause a fire. It's just going through the sun going through the glass. What's just caused mountain fires in the past up the north and things. Where people just left glass bottles.
Well, you can go on. You can go on and on and on. But that is a characteristic of this. And when these fiestas are on, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, that the rules just go out the window. So it just becomes anything goes, basically.
But even in the fiestas, you're in the fiesta, you're having your sandwich, your roll, you've got a drink. When you're finished with it, there's bins everywhere. Put them in a bin, but they just throw them on the floor in a fiesta. It's like, okay, well, the next morning someone comes along, a lot of people come along and have to tidy it up and clean up.
Well, it's all paid for with your taxes.
But is there any need to do that? Is there any need to actually have to walk around people's rubbish and step on people's empty plastic cups and stuff because they can't be bothered to go to a bin?
But that's also a thing as well. I mean, I remember it's always a comment that you would go into. I think we've even spoken about this over the journey, that you'd go into a bar or restaurant and people would choose a bar and restaurant by how dirty the floor was. You know what I mean? So the dirtier the floor, the better the place, and for in a lot of people's opinions, Yeah,
they figure more people have been there.
That's it.
It's more popular.
That's right. Or the tapas must be good. Yeah. Or they must give a lot of tapas if there's a lot of serviettes on the floor, chicken bones, whatever they're throwing. So that's obviously the thing. I mean, it's that particular time with the botellón that is a little bit disturbing, and it brings up another point of what do young people, what keeps them occupied? What can they do except do this type of thing? And that's one of the problems that obviously you're going to have over the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, we try and get my daughter to take part in different things. She still does a theatre class or drama class. She's considering taking the sport up. She's actually quite keen on starting basketball, which is quite late to start basketball in Spain, really, for the first time. She does it at school, but she's never really been part of a team. But she's keen on doing that. So I'm trying to get to do things like that to keep her amused. And then when she does meet with her friends, she does enjoy. She's just started going to the local shopping centre, which seems to be where all the teenagers in Rivas seem to congregate. It's not a huge shopping centre, but it's pretty big. And there's just nothing for the teenagers to do, so they just seem to meet in this shopping centre, walk around, have a drink, sit down on the grass outside and talk, which is fine, but it's a shame they haven't got other things to do. I mean, I used to have a youth centre when I was a kid, and there was a community centre, like a park area, which was for all ages. And in that area at night time, in the afternoons, late evening as well, they'd do bonfires, and we'd cook jacket potatoes on the fire, all these sort of things. They'd have activities, and
that's another thing.
It's a shame it's not on.
That's another thing that I've sort of picked up over the years is that I've had friends here. So in Australia, probably in the UK as well, you don't have problems bringing friends back home. You know what I mean? So, but maybe it's because we live in houses and we've got a backyard. But I remember having mates over all the time. Yeah. And my parents were at home. They were welcoming. They'd go out of their way to make everybody feel good. You play sport in the backyard. You do things at home. Yeah. But I'll ask my girlfriend the same thing. She doesn't even know some of the parents of her friends well. Do you know what I mean? Really? Because they met in parks downstairs rather than go into people's flats. Obviously, I'm generalising, but it does seem to be a thing here that people are not so inviting into homes a lot of the times.
I haven't experienced that. My wife, she had the opposite experience. She had the same sort of thing as me. She'd go to her friend's house and she'd be in friends' houses all the time.
Maybe that's here because there is that house element, but maybe it's the flats. The flats are small. I don't know, but I just got that feeling,
Yeah. I mean, when I was younger, I've got to admit, we didn't spend a lot of time in each other's house. We'd go over to each other's house. We'd knock for someone. You'd say, "Oh, I'm going to knock for Graham." You'd knock on the door, and sometimes you'd go in for a minute while he's getting his shoes on. So you meet the family.
Yeah, but you know his mum or you know his dad, right?
And then, but we'd spend all the afternoon out. We'd be out all day. But I'm talking about when I was 8-9 years old. We'd be out on our bikes until sort of 8 o'clock at night, and having races and playing football and going to the park and stuff. So, and that I think slightly different here. It's just even with the housing area, you can't really rely on the streets being particularly safe around here because of the traffic. Whereas back in the UK, where I grew up, there was a lot of housing estates which had one road going in and the same road going out. So you'd have maybe 50, 60 houses, all different designs. They weren't on straight roads. They'd be on circular roads, or
maybe a lot more cul-de-sacs.
Yeah, cul-de-sacs and things. So there wasn't a lot of traffic going through them. Whereas here, it's all sort of straight roads and all the houses exactly the same design going straight down the road.
There's not many cul-de-sacs here. That's it. Yeah.
So of course, then what happens is that there's traffic going through these roads all the time. So parents get a bit worried about letting the kids go out on their bikes and going down these roads. You can't play in the street. Back in the UK, we'd be playing in the street. And the cars, they knew that the kids would be playing in the street, but you'd only see a car every half an hour or so. It'd just be the other neighbours coming in to park in the driveway. So I think things are different back from when I was a kid to what we're experiencing here.
You could be right. Could be right. Yeah, that's it.
So even if you look at the ways that we experienced the life growing up back in the UK to what my daughters are experiencing here, there is a lot of differences and there's a lot of pros and cons. The whole playing outside, playing with your friends, I think is a lot more difficult in Madrid. I'm not going to say Spain. I'm going to say Madrid because I think it's very similar in the north of Spain to the UK. I think to what we used to do. But you've also got to take into consideration the weather. The kids aren't going to be out playing on their bikes, running around playing football at 6 o'clock in the afternoon in June, July. It's too hot, so they need to find other places to go and to play.
But that's a good point because that weather aspect leads into the later night activities. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah. It makes everything later.
That's right.
It's more of a nocturnal.
So it sort of leads into that 10 o'clock at night. What do we do? Well, it's time to have a drink.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So so I think all of these things probably are related in that sense. But
and this is where I think a lot of English people or British people don't understand the Spanish. A lot of the Spanish don't understand the English because we've grown up differently because of the weather, and the weather actually affects the two countries even more than what people realise in traditions, in cultural ways, in the way that you raise your children. And I don't think neither of the countries have got anything wrong. It's adapting to your environment, and the environment here is very different to back in the UK. And I've had to adapt to it and had to realise that, I'm not going to be letting my kids go out at 6 o'clock in the afternoon on their bikes going to knock for their friends, because when they were 7, 8, 9 years old, they'd have to cross over various roads where there are constantly cars going past, and you're not going to be feeling as safe to do so.
Well, that's a good point because there are a lot of pedestrian crossings, of course, but the system here is main road. There are a lot of main roads where there are 2 lanes. Well, this one down the bottom here is only one, but it does handle a lot of traffic. The one up the top here handles 2 lanes, also now beginning to handle a lot of traffic as well. The area where they do have the local fairs, that's become a really busy area now.
And they have kids. So the younger generation actually racing in their cars in the evenings.
Are they racing up there?
Yeah. I mean, they've put in an extra speed bump now in a couple of places. Not necessarily where our fiestas are, but a little bit further down in one of the local big parks, the Bay of Vistas. They've just put in speed bumps because they had such a problem with sort of like younger people racing cars up and down that road. They've had accidents and everything.
Hoons.
Up here. It's just
Hoons.
Yeah,
but we had those problems in Perth. I remember when I was a kid, Scarborough, close to where I used to
You're
live.
going to have them everywhere.
Yeah, I mean,
you're always going to have them. But the difference for me is that I didn't live in a big city. When I was a kid, I was living in a town, 10,000 population, wasn't really particularly big. And we had a lot of cul-de-sacs, a lot of housing estates which were designed very differently to here. A lot of green areas, a lot of parks and places where you could go. Whereas here, you've got to go to them. So in Rivas, we've got quite a few parks, but you've actually got to get to them to use them.
They're not built into the All right, good. Now we'll move on. There was an article here, John. I'll just open it up here. I think it was in El País. I couldn't really understand it. It said that Spain creates nearly 600,000 jobs in a year, but unemployment rises in the first quarter. Now, I couldn't understand it. It says here that, for example, seasonal factors are to blame, but unemployment's inching up, apparently, 14.7% the national level. So Spain has an enormous problem to create jobs. Now, I don't want to go on too much about this because you get hounded in the comment section. These guys don't know what they're talking about. I have a fantastic job. I'm a computer programmer. That sector's booming at the moment. There's jobs everywhere. Mate, there might be jobs in your sector, but in general, nothing seems to change, in my opinion. And they've brought in a new law here now, which is the clock in, clock out rule. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of comments about it on the Citizens Advice Bureau page, and a couple of people have mentioned it to me as well. It's
I don't know if it's going to affect you as self-employed. But
I don't think it affects self-employed people at the moment. It's if you have employees, I think you have to clock in and clock out. I don't think it's actually self-employed.
See, that's one of the problems that I'm. So my gestor, he sends me every month now a little sheet where I have to write down because I've got two teachers doing a few hours for me, and they're not doing any extra hours. They go into a company, they do their hours, and they go out.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit perplexed as to how this is going to affect me. But every company now, whether it's big or small, has to have a registry, I suppose, of when people go in and when people go out. And the paper the other day says that the smoko and the coffee break is not going to be included in those.
No, they've got to clock out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So people are up in arms about this. Now, one person said that productivity, will most likely improve as a result because people won't feel the need to sit around like they used to do.
And to be honest, I mean. You've got all different types of people, obviously, but there were a few people in my old company. They'd get to work at 9 o'clock. Well, actually, they got to work about 9:30 in the morning. At 10 o'clock, they'd have 25-minute breakfast break.
They were supposed to start at 9.
Yeah, they'd get in at 9:30 because it used to drive me out the wall because I'd be there at 7 o'clock in the morning doing the job I was doing at the time. And at 9 o'clock, I'd want to speak to administration just to get a signature on something so that I could go off and buy some parts or something I needed to do, petty cash and stuff. And I had to wait until they got there at 9:30 to get a hold of petty cash, or I had to risk buying the stuff out of my own money and then hoping they'd give me the money back.
Yeah.
They get at 9:30, and at 10 o'clock, just after 10, they'd all of a sudden they'd be off having breakfast. So I'd be in the cafeteria having breakfast for 20-25 minutes. And you're like, you just got here, So then they go back to the office. This is all the office stuff, not the sort of like because I used to work in gyms,
not the modern,
so it wasn't the trainers and stuff. It was the office stuff. And then about 11 o'clock, you'd see them outside having a fag, and they're having a fag break for 10 minutes, and then again at 12 o'clock, and you'd be like, how many breaks are you having? And there's a couple of them that smoked a lot. And I don't know how much time they wasted just by going out and having a fag. And it went on for probably 3 or 4 years like that until eventually the management changed. And one of them said, what on earth is going on here? This is ridiculous. And he limited them to 2 fag breaks and a morning break every day. But it's still a lot of breaks.
People were taking the piss.
Yeah. Yeah, they were.
Yeah. Well, it is a characteristic that the morning tea, people don't tend to have an afternoon tea, as far as I know. I don't know whether they even have that in the UK anymore, but it used to be like
no, not for donkey's years now.
The morning tea is always the big one. You'd have what's called morning tea, but I don't think many people are drinking tea anymore.
No.
Normally a can of Coke or something.
Well, in the UK, in my experience in the offices and things in the UK, it was quite different because you'd have your little cafeteria or your kitchen.
Well, even a tea lady would come around.
Exactly.
When I first started working back in the day.
Yeah, you never actually stopped working really. Normally, for example, you'd be in an office with 5-6 people in the office, or even on the work floor and stuff. You'd be people doing manual labour and stuff. You wouldn't actually have a break to have a cup of tea or something.
You'd have something at your desk
at lunchtime. One of you, of the 5 or 6 that are working there, would go off. Right, who wants a cup of tea?
Do a run.
Do a tea run, and then they go off. They'd make the tea, come back, give a cup of tea to everyone, and they'd be at their desk having their cup of tea at the desk. And then they'd have half an hour for lunch, and then everyone would be finished work at 5. So, I mean, obviously, again, this also comes back to the weather. This is because of the weather. We didn't need to have extra breaks in the UK, especially lunch breaks where it gets really hot in Spain. You imagine this 50, 60 years ago, before we had air conditioning and everything else, what it must have been like in the middle of the day in Spain. They needed the the 2-hour lunch, 2.5-hour lunch to have and have a siesta and stuff. I mean, they must have needed that, not
Find somewhere
do
cool.
physical work. Yeah, find somewhere cool and have a cold drink and stuff. So I can completely understand why this is happening in Spain. But times have progressed, and we're still having 2.5-hour lunch breaks, which none of my friends that have got them actually want. They say, no, I'd much rather have a shorter period of time for lunch. People still take their Tupperwares in with food they cooked the day before, so they still want an hour.
Yeah,
it's not like the UK where we'd stop and have a sandwich. Obviously the food and everything else is very different.
Well, but because that lunch culture is
exactly,
it's developed from a very young age.
Yeah.
I mean, we've spoken about this on various occasions that my son has a 3-course meal every day. He has his. Whatever they have first, they normally have some type of soup or something, and then they have some fish or some meat, and then they have some dessert, and so it's a very formal.
And it takes a while to go through. I mean, so these guys, they want it.
Takes a while to get served.
Yeah, I mean, for example, in my friend's company, they've reduced the 2-hour lunch now to an hour.
And did people complain?
No. The people wanted it.
Oh, okay.
It's actually the reverse. Most of my friends actually don't want this 2-hour lunch break. Some of them were going home because they said, well, what are we going to do for 2 hours in work? So they went home. Some of them would live too far away to go home, so they were stuck in work for 2 hours, or they had to go to a bar. And they said, well, it's all well and good, but I'm spending €10 on a menu of the day every day. Well, that's €200 in a month. So it's either that or I bring stuff from home and I'm stuck in the office for 2 hours eating lunch when I'm finished in an hour. So they've changed it now and they actually finish an hour earlier. So instead of starting work at 9 o'clock in the morning, which he was doing, and he was working till 7:30 every day because of the breaks and stuff they had. Well, now they've changed the way they've done the breaks. He still starts at 9 o'clock in the morning, but he's going home at 6. So he's a lot happier.
There's still a lot of companies doing that they pay for their. It's part of the salary or a perk that they pay for your lunch.
The lunch break?
No, not the lunch break. But they'll give you like a meal ticket that you can €9 or whatever the
tickets restaurant.
Whatever the workplace agreement is. Where my girlfriend works, they actually have a canteen where they all go in and they have choices of salads and this and that they can choose, and so that's part of her her salary package, let's say. So there are a lot of places like that, but the people that don't have that, and there are a few people that are on temporary contracts, and what they mention here is that 26% of all contracts in Spain is still temporary. So
that's amazing.
It's still quite a lot. So these people might not get lunch included, so to pay €10 for a menu every day, and I mean €10 is a cheap menu nowadays. I mean it goes up to sometimes 11, 12. A couple of weeks ago I was in the north of Spain, it was €13 for a menu,
and then of course you get to, a lot of people also work weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, and the weekend menus are like 15 to 20 euros.
That's exactly right. So if you, let's say you're working 20 days a month, which is what people normally do, so let's even put that at 20 times 10, it's 200. And if you're only making 1,000, it's a big chunk. So but anyway, we'll move on.
But I think there's a lot of Spanish people now that are. I'm sure our Spanish viewers will be able to comment on this and tell us
please
what they
do.
feel,
Please do. Give us your opinion.
I'd be interested to know how many other Spanish people actually are keen on this change. There are some people that have gone quite radical with it. They want Spain to actually change to European working hours. I don't necessarily think that's going to work or even be wanted in Spain. But there are people pushing for that, and they want the 9 to 5. I don't really know how that's going to fit in with the Spanish culture, with the meal, the lunchtime meal. It's too big to be having just half an hour, 45 minutes.
It's too late. It's too late as well.
So I think I don't think that's going to really work. But I'd really be interested in seeing what our Spanish viewers think about the changing hours of the.
Well, that's actually a good point, because a lot of people are not having lunch until 2. So if you're having lunch from 2 to 3, get back to the office, brush your teeth, go to the toilet, time to go. So if you're having lunch at 12:30, which is obviously in Australia, that's the more common time to have lunch, probably in the UK as well, 12:30 people are having lunch.
Time,
you're back at work at 1, 4 hours, bang, on your way home. 5:30. I don't know what time people finish, but more or less that'd be.
In the UK, people tend to work 9 to 5, 9 to 5:30.
Okay.
Maybe. Well, That's the general office hours. A lot of people actually start work 8:30 in the morning and finish.
I know things are changing because I know that the companies are slowly, starting to bring in more of a flexi time when people start work and when people finish. So one of the companies I'm working with at the moment, they've just recently changed the rules that people start at 7:30 in the morning rather than I think it was 8:30.
Yeah.
So they don't have to, but if they want to, they can.
They can.
But the big complaint that I still hear is that a lot of the managers still have that old mentality where they don't come in until 9:30 and they're not leaving until 7:38.
And expecting everyone else to do the same
thing. And they look around the office and there's no one there, and so I think everybody has to change, but it has to come from the ground up. And I suppose that things are starting to improve, and there are people, as you said, that want a more European-based timetable. I mean, at the end of the day, we are in Europe, but again, that point that you made before, that the weather does determine the way things happen.
The weather's determined the way that I think Spain and other countries around the Mediterranean have got their timetable, just as it's in England, we start the day a lot earlier and we finish a lot earlier with regards to dinners and things, because people would take an advantage of the light. So it was lighter earlier, it got darker earlier, so people obviously started work earlier and finished earlier. And I think in Spain it's different because of that, because it's lighter, longer periods of time in the day.
I mean, we could talk about this as well. That Spain is out of whack when it comes to its timetable. And one thing you will notice here is that at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, this week it's been hot. 6 o'clock is like the hottest part of the day sometimes, or at least it feels like it.
Feels like it sometimes.
You go outside at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, early evening, and it's like this sun. When we went to the fair up there, the sun was just bang in your face at 7 o'clock.
2:30, 3 o'clock for me. That's the time I find it absolutely. It's just baking on. We had the kids' party.
But it goes on all. But it's a long. It
carries on going. Yeah. I mean, it gets. I think from 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, it starts gradually getting a little bit cooler as the evening goes on. But it's still really hot in the summer until 8 o'clock at night. It can be still really hot. So and obviously I think the Spanish people have adapted to the weather perfectly with their old timetable. But I think with the rest of Europe changing the way they do things, and that Spain never changed because that was what they do. That's their culture, that's their tradition, and I respect that. But I think now there's a lot of people that don't want to be working until 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah, obviously, I don't think anybody does. Yeah. But it is something that's always surprised me, and we'll finish up in a minute. We've been rambling on now for 42. The first topic took up more time than I was expecting, so we'll touch on some of the subjects that I have here next week. But one of the things that I never get my head around is that we have like a paddle court down near that shopping centre that you mentioned before. And there's people booking courts at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Like you'll go down there. I came home one time a bit late and there was people playing paddle at 11:30 p.m.
Yeah.
on a Wednesday night.
I would rather play paddle at 11 o'clock. I mean, I don't play paddle, but I've had a couple of goes. But I'd rather play at 11 o'clock at night than be trying to play paddle at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when it's absolutely baking hot.
No, but this was in winter.
In winter?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because because of those timetables.
Yeah. Well, I suppose if you have dinner, by the time you get home from work, you had your dinner.
That's
That's the only time you've got that.
I mean, in summer it's understandable. Yeah. It's just too hot. But this was I think it was probably in November or even I can't remember when it was. But people were there at 11 o'clock at night playing paddle because of that. They finish at 7:38. Don't get home. Maybe they get a traffic jam on the way home. Don't get home until 9. Have dinner. See the kids. They're meeting Pepe for paddle. What time? 11 o'clock's good for me. Okay, yeah. And then the next day, bang, do it again. It's everything is just everything is late. And it does take a while to get used to. But anyway, the weather does determine the way people move and the way people do things, and it's the way it is. It's the way it is. But that's actually a good point. If you want to go to a restaurant and get served without a queue, go there at about 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and you won't have any dramas.
Well, you might have one drama. They might not have the kitchen open. But
but I'm talking about if you go to a shopping centre or somewhere like that. Course, normally you can get a meal before everybody decides to pile in at 10. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I think that's a good way of going about it. I think
10 o'clock you won't get a table in a lot of places, but if you get there at 8,
but it's lunchtime. When we go out, just us 4.
You head out at what, 1 o'clock?
We head down about 1:30.
Yeah.
If you go down at 1:30 to get there at 1:30, you get anywhere table easy to get in. As soon as you get 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock you're gone.
It's just like avalanche of people coming in.
And that's probably like that way until 4.
Yeah.
So it's a bit complicated. But anyway, all right. So we'll start to wrap it up. We've been going for close to 45 minutes. So thanks for your participation again this week, John.
You're welcome.
See you next week, hopefully. Questions or comments, please leave them in the section below. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. Remember to download the podcast on all of the major podcast platforms. And we'll see you next week. Hasta luego.